G'day, it's Brian Ferguson from Freedom Golf, and what we're doing today is we're having a look at the construction of this golf club. I've randomly picked an 8-iron off out of one of the sets I had on the wall. This has been manufactured by the Exotic company. So let's have a look at this golf club and see what we find when we pull it apart. So I'm going to heat the head off. I've already actually preheated it a little bit, so it shouldn't take very long to get the head off. Okay, I'm warming the hosel.
So the heat, what does the heat do?
The heat actually melts the glue, Bob, that the golf club's put together with. Years ago they used to pin golf clubs. Very hard to get balances of golf clubs right when you're adding pins to them because it's very hard to control the weights. So what I'm going to do now is put it in the vise here. I'm going to just prise this head off. Let's see what we find. Okay, now that's really interesting. What we've got here is a golf club that's centre of gravity, or sweet spot if you like to call it that, should be around this area here. Somewhere between the 4th and 5th groove up from the base of the club. That's the part that will produce the most consistent results. Right, looking down at the hosel of the golf club here, what have we found? This is called a brass plug. And if we tap it, it just fell on the floor there, Bob. It shouldn't be too warm.
I'm not going to take a chance.
Well done. We love you, Bob. We don't want you to burn We don't want you to burn those little beautiful hands of yours. Okay, so let's put this brass plug on the scales. Let's see what it weighs. Okay, so that weighs about 4 grams. Right, now, one of the things I love about this particular golf club company here, it's a company we deal with called KZG. When I get these heads through from the company, what they do is they write the individual weightings of the heads on them. And there should be approximately 7 grams difference between each head. And that means that when we put these golf clubs together, they balance out, or they swing weight the same way, so that when we're actually swinging the golf club they feel the same. The problem is that as heads are manufactured, weights can vary a lot, and what a lot of manufacturers tend to do, they tend to get these heads in lighter weights, because if the heads are too heavy, there's too much work involved in getting weight out of the head. So what they tend to do, a lot of the heads nowadays unfortunately ordered in lighter components. They're very irregular, most of them. So what they have to do is counterbalance the golf club by putting these weight units down the shaft and in the hosel of the club. Now what that actually does is, if I just put this back together, if I put this golf club back together without the weight in it, its centre of gravity or sweet spot would be right in the middle. Adding this weight to the shaft and putting it back together, that now changes the sweet spot or feel of the club. It'll actually make that sweet spot change to a slightly higher position, perhaps somewhere near here, depending on how much weight's in the club. So now when we hit that ball in the middle of the club, we're not really getting that feel that we really deserve. And I've had golf clubs that I've pulled apart. Some of them have had weights in them up to 15 grams. And it may be a great idea to get the golf club swing weight correct, but really the balance point is so important as well. And it's funny, you know, because when you go to tour events, you know, some of the tour players that are using lots and lots of different golf clubs, depending on what they like or depending who sponsors them, you will often see that on the back of the clubs there is lead tape, and if the heads aren't weighed correctly, the second best way to weight a golf club would be to have lead tape put in that golf club as close to the sweet spot as possible. Right, and that's why we see tour players with lead tape on their clubs. They're not doing it to make themselves look tough or anything like that. They're simply just trying to balance the clubs out. And what you'll find a lot of them have done is pulled their clubs apart, taken those lead slugs and brass slugs out of the shaft, and then they've simply made up those weights by putting lead tape on the back of the club. The best way to do it though is find a reputable company like, well, I'm going to mention their names because I've got a lot of respect for them. One of them's Henry Griffiths and the other one's KZG's, and they're both companies that in my mind build golf club heads to very perfecting or near perfect standards. So we don't have to counterweight golf clubs. We can build them with shafts, grips and heads without adding foreign material to them.